Well, welcome to this keynote section this afternoon on aviation. I'll get my guests straight up if you want to grab a seat. As we just heard, we have Shai Weiss. Shai, for you, it's your first time here, I think, at WTM, isn't it? At least in this capacity. So welcome to the hot seat. Let's see how we get on in the next 45 minutes. There's going to be an opportunity for questions later on in the session. It's quite hard out here in the glare of the spotlights. We're like a couple of rabbits, so I'll put my hand up. If there are questions, just put your hand up and we'll get a mic to you a little bit later on. So Shai, kicking off, I mean, this actual session comes under the headline of Meet the Leaders. So I'm obliged to ask you a little bit about your leadership style, and we're just chatting now, and you were telling me your first job was actually in the Israeli army.
If you call that a job,
did that influence?
I didn't make any money, so you don't get it paid for serving in the military. Yeah, but I did serve in the Israeli military from the age of 18 to 22, so it was
quite a long stint.
Yeah, platoon commander in the Tank Corps, and then a battalion operational officer.
And does that mean you've developed a militaristic style leadership, very command and control? And,
no, I think it means I'm more demanding than usual.
Sorry?
More demanding than usual.
Interesting. I'm going to probably ask you a question about that later on. But you moved on from there into the financial sector. You've been involved in a number of different businesses prior to Virgin Group.
Indeed. So, I started in Israel, but a long time ago, in 1992, I moved to New York. I always wanted to go and study abroad and kind of compete in the global stage. And so New York was a great place to start. I got a job in New York. I studied at night. And then my big break came when I got into business school. I went to Columbia Business School. Actually, today I did a podcast for the business school, which was pretty cool to do, to talk to future students and alumni. And then the thing in Columbia was either consulting at that point in time or investment banking. And I figured I was not going to be a very good consultant. And everybody else also agreed. And I thought I'd go into investment banking, which I thought I could do much better. I was pretty good with the numbers. I worked hard. So I got a job in Morgan Stanley in London. I was actually the first Israeli ever recruited in Morgan Stanley M&A Group. And I came to London in 1996. I came for full-time in 1997. And from then on, I kind of straddled between investing and operations. And a few years ago, probably about 10 years ago, decided that operations would be it.
And at what point did you move into the Virgin Group? Because again, coming into that group, was that on the financial side? It certainly wasn't the airline side initially.
No, it wasn't. And actually, it's exactly 15 years, literally 15 years ago since I met Richard Branson. Okay. I was working for a company called NTL, the cable company, which was called at that point in time NT-Hell. Right. It had gone bankrupt. We were turning it around. We bought another company called TeleWest. And then I came up with a simple idea that we needed to change the brand. And we needed to buy a mobile company. Virgin Mobile was around. I pitched this idea to Richard Branson in November 2004. It took us about a year and a half to complete. It was a complicated transaction. And what we now know is Virgin Media, which of course was very successful, so for about $23 billion thereafter. And that allowed me to really hook up with Sir Richard Branson, and from then on I've been doing stuff around the group, but the last 6-7 years have been Virgin Atlantic, and that's all I do.
Yeah, because I think you and I met at that point when you just come in as a CFO to the airline out of a more financially robust side of the business, you could say. And I was just saying to Joseph Ferrari this morning, CEO of Wizz, you came from the FMCG background, you were selling packets of washing powder and washing up liquid. Wasn't that a bit more a certain career than trying to set up an airline? He's actually confounded that. But what about you? I mean, you said you started as a banker. The margins there, there's been banks we've seen fall by the wayside, but the old joke about airlines, start with a large fortune and end up with a small one in an airline.
Well, I think the notion that you have to be 30, 40 years in aviation to be a good aviation executive, I don't think is right any longer. Definitely not at the leadership positions. It's more about team building and seeking opportunities and making things count and innovating and delighting our passengers and our people. So it's true that in our teams there are many, many people who know everything there is to know about aviation. They recognize the type of plane based on the noise of the engine. I am not one of those.
I can relate to that.
Yep, and so you're one of those fortunate people. I am not. So I have to find another way of finding where I add value, and I think there's plenty of opportunities in a consumer-facing business.
But it's interesting because, I mean, airlines that are succeeding more these days seem to me, as someone who's a bit long of a tooth in the industry, are the ones where they blend that kind of enthusiasm for aviation or a bit of geekishness with very strong financial leadership. Now we see, Ryanair is an airline like that. We see a high level of financial focus in groups like, IAG, the American carriers. We're going to talk about your partners. You have come into Virgin Atlantic as CFO. Now you've become the CEO. The results of Virgin have not always been that robust. That's perhaps been one of its biggest challenges. The airline is 35 years old, but it has not been putting a lot of money into Sir Richard's bank account in the past, and maybe not yet to the new shareholders.
Actually, just on that point specifically, we got to correct the story.
Okay.
Because actually, money to our shareholders, we've done very, very well.
Okay.
Remember that Richard Branson sold 49% to Singapore for $1 billion.
True.
We pay royalty fees for our brand. There are many things that we support our shareholders. Of course, we're not a charity, and of course, we want to improve our financial results. But the mission statement that I got together with Craig, our previous CEO, 5-6 years ago, was stabilize the financial performance of the company without losing the magic. That is now complete. Indeed, we had 3 years of profit before the Brexit vote, and very much on track to getting close to break even this year. We're probably exceeding our targets this year, breaking next year, and return to profitability in 2021. But I would say, indeed, scale, and I'm sure we'll talk about it, scale is important for Virgin Atlantic. It comes through our partners, but also through our renewed ambition through the acquisition of Flybe, which will be rebranded Virgin Connect, our quest to become Britain's second flag carrier.
We're going to come to all of these things.
Teasers for the future.
We're going to come to all of those things. But back on the financials, I mean, you've come in with a financial background. I was reading your report from last year online. It was several pages, and I noticed you had your diary in the room next door, Velocity. And you have this new campaign, Velocity, which has got a lot of public-facing and more the soft customer side of things. But behind it, there is a big financial focus, isn't there? Indeed. You are really trying to do what is so hard for this industry to squeeze an honest profit out of an airline entity.
Look. Virgin Atlantic is a unique company. I think we know, and Velocity is our 3-year plan, just for the audience. So the name of our plan is Velocity. It's a 3-year strategic plan, which started at the beginning of the year with my tenure as CEO. We worked on it for a year or a year and a half before that. At the heart of Velocity is a very simple principle. There is a 2-to-1 preference for buying Virgin Atlantic. If you ask, I'm hoping this audience will be reflective of that, but if you ask the audience who they prefer to fly with, I suspect that 2/3 of the room will go one way and 1/3 will go the other way. The 2/3 will be on our camp. But we have had impediments that prevented from people who have a preference for Virgin Atlantic and Virgin Holidays to buy. It was very simple. First of all, it was the emergence of the low-cost carriers and the fact that we let them come into the market. They didn't ask our permission, but we didn't act vigorously enough in terms of competitive.
Virgin did have one in the group in the past. It was Virgin Express, albeit more
many years ago. Yes, many. So we were ahead of the competition. But what we did is we reimagined our economy product and introduced what we call the Delight product. We also have the Light product, which is just if you want to travel without a baggage. I'm
going to come back, give you.
Let me just finish.
I'm going to give you your 15 minutes of fame on that in a minute, but just want to draw out the financial side.
Let me just finish the point on if I can.
Okay.
So we said there were impediments. The first was price. We've tackled that. Second was loyalty. We've spun out our loyalty program to the Virgin Group to really capitalize on the Federation of Companies in the UK, and we're doing something I think quite unique there. And the third thing is network. The acquisition of Flybe, the partnership with Delta, and the hopefully soon-to-be sanctioned expanded joint venture with Air France-KLM. All those things combined with our people and the love for service is at the heart of Velocity.
And that's going to help turn it around. But I mean, it's something you can't take your finger off the pulse on any cost element in this business, can you? And is that something that, particularly, I'm saying this because I'm talking about you individually, you're a finance guy, is that something something that you think despite the need for service, you get all your staff thinking that way. We hear the jokes about Michael O'Leary tells people they can't use a colour photocopier, steal the pens from the hotels, but it's all about this ethos of thinking, well,
so
we've got to focus on that.
Like I said, I don't have a problem with being positioned as a finance guy, but I don't think I'm just a finance guy.
No, but what I'm saying is many successful airlines have that blend of the financial discipline.
And indeed, what we did in the past 5 years before the Velocity Plan was we set out to reduce our non-fuel costs per mile or per available seat kilometer, and we indeed reduced it structurally by 125 million pounds on a recurring basis, which then set the return to growth, the announcement of Tel Aviv, Sao Paulo, Mumbai, Gatwick to Boston, Gatwick to New York, and more things that we will announce maybe tomorrow. Not today, but I can allude to it, some maybe things to do with the demise of Thomas Cook. So I think there is great financial discipline. We've now set the house in order such that growth is the only way truly to get back to profitability, and the numbers are demonstrating this. This has been a pretty good year for Virgin Atlantic.
I did notice in those comments that you put in your report about Velocity, and you're coming back to your opening point about I'm a demanding boss, and I'm an ex-revenue manager myself. You said you want to see your load factors going up, but the yields have got to stay high as well.
That's right.
Is that not being too demanding a boss?
No, I don't think so. I'll give you some statistics. So, first of all, just as a commentary, you were commenting on the fact that the crowd was not 100%, close to 100%, and I said in an airline, sometimes 90% is better than 100%. Depends what quality, everybody's paid. Quantity. It's the quality of the audience. So thank you all for coming to see us today.
It's a real premium audience to go to.
Indeed, even upper class. What I would say, if you look at the statistics of Virgin Atlantic, we haven't announced this, but it's been the 12th month of increasing load factor. So October was our highest load factor in 5 years. Our unit revenues in October, in September, were the highest they have been on a year-over-year basis, including adjusting for currency since the year that lapsed the Olympics. So I would say you can actually do both, and I don't like these. Don't give me just load factor or just yield. I prefer both.
That's the both. Who wouldn't? Now, in terms of your ownership, I mean, obviously, I meant to say in my opening comments. I mean, Virgin, as I said, born 35 years ago. It's always been a swashbuckling maverick airline personified by Sir Richard himself. He's gone a bit more into the background. We're going to talk a few times about the shareholding, but you mentioned he sold a chunk to Singapore Airlines.
Will be selling.
We'll clarify that point in a moment.
Yep.
But the Singapore shareholding, I think, was sold subsequently to Delta.
Indeed.
So Delta came in. Now Delta's, if I'm not mistaken, my memory's not tricking me, is the most successful airline in the world financially. You've got them as a backer.
By far.
And you've got, and please elaborate on this, you've got Air France KLM in, but I don't know where it is with the regulators. Is it green lighted now by the EU or that?
EU, yes. We're waiting for the US approval.
US DOT?
Yes.
How long till you get that final picture?
We always say very soon, and a bit of political turmoil is always in the way here. But just to clarify, Delta, which is indeed the best run airline in the world, and we're the most loved. Okay?
Good combination.
It's an excellent combination. So they're the best run, and I think they have pretty good, they've had a great success with Virgin Atlantic, and which of course has informed their model of buying stakes in other companies, especially up to 49%. Of course, the recent transaction, which is now 49%, was LATAM. And yes, we learn from them. So they bought 49%. The transaction was actually signed on December the 13th, 2012. I had the great pleasure of negotiating with Ed Bastian, the CEO of Delta. And
How was that?
Fantastic. If there is a company that is a kindred spirit to us in terms of partnership, it is Delta. And of course, there's so many things we learned, have learned from Delta, but there's also a few things that they've learned from us.
Teach them.
Not teach, just explain. And then just to finish the answer is that Air France KLM indeed is buying 31% of Virgin Atlantic. That transaction will complete as soon as we have antitrust immunity approved in the U.S., which is just now pending the final paperwork.
I want to come back to that point about the relevance of the group in a minute, but I want to challenge you on something and debate with you before we get to that point when I'm going to
challenge and debate.
Yes. So you're putting a lot of noise out in the market right now. Second flag carrier. We have the hoped for third runway at Heathrow Airport in maybe 10 years time.
Well, first of all, the target is 2026.
Let's see whatever happens. I put a bit of drift in there. A bit of extra.
My rule on this one, by the way, John, is I work to the plan of record. No speculation. 2026. That's right.
So less than 10 years away. You're already a big player in the London market. You started in Gatwick. You grew strongly in Heathrow and the regions too. Manchester, Glasgow, Belfast, and Manchester in particular.
Yes.
Just want to look the now and the future, London and the regions. London, you're adding new routes, even within your current slot portfolio. Tel Aviv, I don't know if that's your hometown, but close
Jerusalem.
So close by. Yes. That started about a month ago. Bombay, Mumbai is back online again. Yep. And you're going to Brazil next year. So
yes.
Tell us about Heathrow as it is today, before any growth. Will you continue to add routes by juggling around the slots, working
No,
with your
first
partners?
of all, so yes, indeed, Heathrow is our biggest place of operations. We have 30 slots there. By the way, just as a side note, we operate less than 5% of the slots at Heathrow. Our competitors, IAG, BA, own more than 55% of the slots. I know we're going to come back to that because that underpins our argument for two flag carriers in the UK and the need to change the slot regime. But yes, Heathrow is important to us. We are growing. We have not grown for 5 years as we fix the fundamentals of Virgin Atlantic, and I think they are now, nothing is fixed forever, but it's pretty healthy, and growth is upon us. If we could find more slots that are attractively priced, and we thought that there was a market that would be good for Virgin Atlantic where we can serve consumers and businesses in the UK, we would go after it.
So you are indeed willing to opportunity to go after
Absolutely. We've just acquired one slot. I'm not going to say from whom. We acquired a slot. Indeed, we are going to fly to, we started to Tel Aviv on 25th of September. Mumbai started last week, 27th of October. São Paulo early next year. And of course, out of Gatwick. But I do want to also call attention to Manchester.
No, I was going to move on to Manchester in a minute. But I mean, I think it was prior to your time in the hot seat as CEO, maybe it was Craig, but you cut some other points. Some parts of South Africa, some parts of Asia were trimmed back as the Delta partnership began to grow more of a US focused. I mean, we can see here you're adding different destinations like Brazil and like India. Do you think other Asian points would feature as part of your thinking?
Yes. And by the way, it's not like I took over and everything that happened before me was.
You were already there.
I was there. I was a chief commercial officer after I was the CFO. I think all those were good decisions. We were flying to the wrong airport in Japan. Cape Town was not making money, and Dubai was losing money for 11 years straight. These are just simple decisions.
Commercial decisions.
So the future for us is all about finding the right opportunities for us to grow and grow further with our partners that we have. Asia is super important. You may have seen that we announced something with China Eastern. So that's right. So if you look at our partnerships with Virgin Australia, China Eastern, of course Delta, Air France, and KLM, Aeromexico, and hopefully maybe LATAM in the future. Our strategy is very much to be a member of the Delta, call it
wider kind of family collective.
And we would say we're the most beautiful and sexy child of all of them. Yes, I would say that.
Now, coming back to what you alluded to there, today's position, Manchester. I'm a northerner, but not from that side of the Pennines in between. But Manchester, they talk about it as the London of the North. For you, I guess it is and will increasingly become a northern hub.
Actually, we call it a northern. It's the fortress in the north.
Fortress, it's a good name. Good
Yeah.
name. Should be Leeds, but anyway, what can I say?
Could be Leeds,
As
but
a Yorkshireman.
there's not a nicer. I think the airport.
The
in
airport's
Manchester.
not
Yes,
right.
yes, it's not the right size.
Up to what
Yes.
you need at the moment. But yeah, Manchester, I mean, it would have started, it seems to me in my eyes, it would have started more as a leisure,
Yep.
long haul, places like Florida, Caribbean. But you've been branching out. You know,
We
you've got-
have.
I was reading you have a lot of 747 capacity on New York. You've launched, I think, Los Angeles.
Los
as
Angeles,
well.
yes.
And is that also something you plan to do more of? And does Delta play a pivotal role? Because you're not just relying on point to point. You've got all the firepower of Delta's domestic in the
there's
US.
a couple themes here. So, first of all, I want to say that, you know, as fellow aviation participants, we know that the demise of Thomas Cook was a sad event for the, you know, for people in the UK, for customers in the UK, for people who worked for them. By the way, we've already started to recruit people from Thomas Cook. In the cabin crew, mostly, and of course, pilots. But we had a strategy to make Manchester a significant hub for Virgin Atlantic. We had a strategy which was called Win in Manchester. And, you know, we haven't declared winning, but of course the recent events were important for us, and we intend to serve the northern powerhouse, the fortress in the north, and of course we already made announcements for further flying for the winter, you know, increasing capacity on New York, but also adding frequencies to Barbados and Las Vegas, and we will do more. I think I alluded to that in the future. But for us, the ability to operate in Manchester is second to none. We're the largest carrier there with Flybe. Virgin Connect that connects there. That's going to be a big deal. The new terminal has, for the first time, a Virgin Atlantic lounge and a Virgin Holiday lounge in the main pier at the best location in the airport. So for us, it's a fantastic opportunity to really capitalize.
What about the challenge of it? Seems to me, as someone who's done network planning for Manchester routes in the past, in the dim and distant past, you can get volume. I mean, I know Manchester is an airport, 20 million plus passengers, but 80% are maybe Thomas Cook type customers or EasyJet, Ryanair going short all around Europe on holidays. There's a big business community, but airlines seem to have wrestled with it on the long haul to get, they can fill the planes up, but it's like the front end, your upper class seats.
So look, first of all, leisure traffic in the UK has suffered post-Brexit. And I believe, of course, airlines are in a cyclical business, but I'll give you a few facts which are quite interesting. Thomas Cook, in overlap markets, so places we already fly to, served 600 sectors. So back and forth is 300,000 passengers. Of those 600,000, about 100,000 are in Gatwick and 500,000 in Manchester. We are not a short-haul carrier, right? We're not going to fly to Egypt, Spain, Italy. But we will be flying to Orlando, which is our #1 destination. We're the #1 provider with Virgin Holidays to Orlando, and there's a tremendous opportunity to serve the Thomas Cook passengers who actually went and are going to Orlando. Second thing, right now Virgin Atlantic sells a third of its tickets in the US.
Right.
That's up from 20% 5 years ago, and it's double over the last 10 years.
A lot due to the power of your partner.
The power of the partnership. You know, these things make a difference, and that's why I'm feeling a bit better about you know, our prospects in Manchester, and why I don't think we should lose sight of the fact that we are a really strong player there and can serve more. By the way, one of the things that we are talking to the airport there is, you mentioned the 20 million catchment area, but only 3% of the passengers in Manchester connect.
Right.
At Heathrow, it's 30%. In Gatwick, it's 6%. So we're telling them that there is more that can be done on connectivity in flows. As a network geek, you would know what I'm talking about.
Absolutely. And now turning to the future we'll probably weave Manchester in again, but your ambitions for Heathrow, if the runway arrives on time...
I'm ambitious, period.
Sorry?
Ambitious, period.
I can see that. We're not going to get through all the material in the 20 minutes we've got left. You have the ambition to get a bigger share of the capacity at Heathrow with this third runway. Tell me a bit about that, because I've got some healthy skepticism to throw back.
Of course you do. That's your job. I'm going to take a minute just to give a bit of background to the audience. So currently there are 2 runways at Heathrow, and a third has already been approved by the government to be built, and an expansion is earmarked for 2026. I'll put to one side 2020 2026, that's a separate matter, whatever it is. 350 new slots will come in. As I mentioned, Virgin Atlantic owns less than 5% of the slots. IAG and its cohort own more than 55%, so they clearly have a dominant position. The slot allocation regime, so 350 new slots come in. If we do not change the current slot regime, Virgin Atlantic would get roughly 10, and our friends, competitors, will get about 100.
In the ratio of what people got now?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And here is a supporting fact. 1 in 4 passengers in Heathrow fly on a monopoly route. 18.5 million passengers at Heathrow face no competition on the route they fly.
But is that partly because some of those routes simply they could never handle a second airline, or maybe a route that you flew and pulled off?
That's speculation. 1 in 4 operate a monopoly route. We believe that Britain deserves better. Consumers and businesses in the UK deserve better, and the only way to do that is to seize on this once-in-a-life opportunity and use the slot allocation to create a new flag carrier, a second flag carrier. By the way, anyone can sign up for that. We believe we're best positioned. And the last point here is this. Unlike other industries, we are not asking to take anything from anyone. We're just saying those 350 slots, we want 162 slots, which would mean that we would double in size on the long haul, offer more connectivity into Europe, and also domestically. And I think about 4 weeks ago, we outlined 84 new routes that we could fly should we be allocated this pool.
Well, 2 questions for you on what you've enunciated there, Shai. Number 1, I mean, you say, well, 55% with your friends down the road, so to speak, IAG or BA, is a dominant position. But your own partners, if I look at their home bases like Delta in Atlanta, Air France in Paris, Charles de Gaulle, KLM, their slot shares are higher at those home airports. So what if somebody was to make the same case in those airports and say, hey, Delta shouldn't have what it has in Atlanta?
But you see the difference here. Now we're talking about an addition of a runway. So the similarities end there. This is an opportunity.
It's the ratio of a new capacity.
Exactly right. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to set the market up for success. Mm-hmm. In the US, there is enough competition between, you would say that if you look at flag carriers, there's probably 4 of them, United, American, Delta, and Southwest. Yeah. And in Japan, there are 2 flag carriers. In Korea, there are as well. So I think the argument here, right now, we have one dominant player.
But there's a lot of competition in Heathrow. Now, what about other airlines who are there or who have said they'd like to be there? What about them making the same claim? Maybe one of the Gulf Airlines who's there, wouldn't they like to fly somewhere else? I know one of the Gulf Airlines said to me, by pure coincidence, we get people saying, why don't you stick 6 A380s a day to New York, because we don't want to go on a certain other airline's older.
I only run one airline.
EasyJet.
EasyJet is an interesting one. I'll come back to EasyJet. But for the Gulf carriers, they can,
Singapore Airlines, your old partner.
Our old partner, I don't think they're going to do this. A flag carrier has to emerge in the sense that it has to have some affinity with the businesses and people in the United Kingdom. EasyJet is an interesting question because we know that in those 162 slots that I mentioned, only about 35 will be allocated into the long haul. The rest will be into European and domestic.
By you or by whoever?
By us or our partners.
Right.
And who is to say who will emerge as one of our partners?
Okay. Yeah, because certainly EasyJet's made it clear they're interested to come in. And in terms of the whole dynamic, we haven't moved on yet, but now's the right time to bring in Flybe, the acquisition, or newly to be named Virgin Connect.
Yes.
Has it been renamed yet? You've said it, but it's not.
Sorry, we've announced that we will rename it. Yeah. But when you rename it, you don't just slap a name on an airplane. You need to do this when the customer service is up to scratch, when the websites are there, when we have the cabins, reinvigorated, when the livery can be painted. So I would expect the actual rebranding exercise to start somewhere in Q2 next year. But we have announced the name.
And coming back to that theme, which I think maybe it's boring but essential, a financial theme. You have a regional space. I know from my own career experience, it's the hardest to survive in. So many regional carriers have gone to the wall, not least in the last 1 or 2 years. Smaller aircraft, proportionally higher landing fees. Flybe has seen many difficult times.
They have.
Are you and your partners, Stobart and the investors, Cyrus, are they going to really be the salvation, or are you just going to wield your knife, say, well, sorry, we don't need 80 aircraft and all these fiddly regional routes, we just want to do a certain feed job in Heathrow, maybe something in Manchester, and that's it.
Well, the answer is in the composition of the shareholdings. Had we wanted to do that, we would just bought it ourselves.
Yeah.
So we didn't do that. So that means that there is a life for Flybe Virgin Connect to serve local communities in the UK, which we do. We actually compete with planes and with trains and car.
Yeah.
And of course, we, Virgin Atlantic, have a disproportionate interest in the connectivity in Manchester and the connectivity in Heathrow, which we've come to an arrangement where we actually control those outcomes by putting capital at risk. Mm-hmm. So I think there's a very interesting medium here, but the first thing to do is to continue allowing Flybe Virgin Connect to fly, completing the turnaround. Indeed, it was precariously close to bankruptcy, and that is going quite well. Yeah. Reinvigorating the people and the management team, and then when it's all ready, we would start the rebranding exercise. But this is not, we didn't buy this for 1 year. We bought it for for the long term.
I mean, I was always told by my bosses early in my career as a newly fledged network planner, you can never make money on short haul. And I believed it. I was working for a certain airline that did have feeder flights into Heathrow at the time, way back to the 1980s. But later on, when I saw what the guys like Ryanair were doing, I thought, hey, it's a different approach. You can make money on short haul, but can you do both? Can you get the feed that you need for that growing long haul network, and depending on how you account for it internally, still show, a positive result for the actual short haul side of the business?
And the answer is going to be, one of these, absolutely. Because remember, first of all, Virgin Atlantic is a standalone entity, and Virgin Connect is a standalone entity by virtue. It
has to look after its own bottom line.
Yeah, that's right. There is, for us, clearly, feed into Manchester and Heathrow is going to be a differentiating factor. By the way, we already have a partnership with Flybe. The whole thing started with a co-chair and seeing that the revenues have increased year after year based on work that we would have done, and we said we should go further, especially with our focus on Manchester and especially with our desire to become a network carrier and a flag carrier out of Heathrow.
Why don't you just call yourself, I saw in your internal document or your report, you did call yourself a big network carrier, because isn't
a big network carrier?
Well, I'm putting the word big in there, but network carrier rather than a flag carrier, because isn't that a bit of a passé old name?
We are a network carrier.
I worked for an airline in the 1980s, which maybe some people in the room remember, British Caledonia.
Of course.
We wanted to be a second flag carrier. We never got what Virgin got. I could sit here and be very jealous, because we wanted to be able to move to Heathrow and weren't allowed to. No sooner than we had been bought by BA, Virgin upsticks and moved a lot of its routes to Heathrow. So you've already got a great position, as you described, in the prime airport. What does flag carrier really do? And look, your ownership's now going to be
but first of all, let's
global.
Let's differentiate two things. We are indeed becoming and transforming ourselves to become a network carrier. Mm-hmm. There's no questions about that. And a point-to-point carrier at Heathrow is a very difficult proposition. Half the flights would not fly unless there were flows coming in from all over Europe and the UK. The flag carrier point is a way of capturing the imagination of people in the UK, politicians and policymakers, to explain the fact that the status quo is hurting competition. And we believe it's not just a second flag carrier. The two flag carriers can emerge. By the way, I urge all of you to go to www.twoflagcarriers.com and sign up and send a letter to your MP that you want to support us in our quest to do this for the UK. And of course, the turmoil in the new elections will mean that we will have to do this all over again, and we will. But the logic is sound. It's not what I say. Look at what the competition authorities have said. Look at what John Holland Kay, CEO of Heathrow, has said, and look what the DFT just said. You were at the same conference that I was
a couple of weeks ago.
There you go.
No, but I think one of your strongest calling cards, it seems to me, is not just that you now have two major successful airline groups behind you as shareholders with their financial resources and expertise and learning from you as the kind of maverick, so to speak. But you're part of this joint venture across the transatlantic. You have it with Delta.
Yep.
I read it the other day, but when I was researching this, I couldn't find it again. I'm pretty sure Gagy or somebody in Air France said last week that the joint venture that Air France KLM has with Delta and yours yours will merge into
That's the whole idea, yes.
early next year.
That's the same thing as the antitrust approval we're seeking,
right.
is to merge them.
It's the US DOT approval.
Yes, it's a $13 billion transatlantic business. And here's the nice thing. Virgin Atlantic has an equal seat at the table. If I told you 6 or 7 years ago that we would be sitting here and I would be telling you that we would have a seat at the table with Delta, Air France, and KLM on a $13 billion transatlantic joint venture, which is number one in customer satisfaction across the Atlantic and growing in its significance for businesses and consumers in the UK and beyond, people would say that is impossible. Well, it is happening and has already happened.
And what about the mentality of the different players in that group? You've got your brash Americans, the bastions, you've got your straight-speaking Dutch guys like Peter Elbers, you've got the French approach, with
and this is where
Ben Smith, who's actually Canadian anyway.
This is where it does work, because this is where we have a disproportionate voice at the table and where love takes over. So we spread the love, we're the glue that makes it happen, and we've had an unbelievable partnership with Delta. Delta has a great partnership with Air France KLM, and all of us are uniting
Air
together.
France KLM seem to have had a few little family frictions of their own in the last year between CEOs, or was the KLM CEO going to stay, and that's consuming a bit of
Even
energy.
Siblings fight from time to time.
True. Good answer. Now, to resource all this, I think another big change I see with Virgin, I know we're quite tight on time, but we haven't even touched on your fleet. The fleet's in a big stage of renewal.
It is.
When's the delightful icon, Queen of the Sky 747 going to go? It's not much longer, is it? Because you've got a lot of new kits.
So so we've had, so first of all, we've ordered A350s dash 1000.
You've got a couple or so already?
Yeah, 4 have already entered, 3 come in next year, and 12 will be there by the end of 21. We announced that we will be replacing the A330s with the A339 Neos. Those start coming in Q4 of 2021. Here's the fact that it's going to be so beautiful. By 2023, our fleet will be 5.3 years old. And CO2 reduction will be 32% versus the preceding 10 years. And the 747, indeed, the iconic 50-year-old plane, although with various variations, will retire over the next 2 to 3 years.
I'm going to do it in style when that retires.
We will do it in style, and we're thinking, actually, one of my pet projects on the side is what can we keep of an iconic 747, given the heritage and the significance
Absolutely.
of 747s.
I'll be there to get some of that from you.
There you go.
I had 2 questions that were given to me when I put out a couple of tweets the other day, and somebody came back and said, can you ask Shai about those herringbone seats? Is he going to get rid of his herringbone seats? Because people don't like them.
Well, and the A350s, it's not exactly. It's changed. And I can tell you that the A339s will be even better.
Somebody else asked me, in the context of, you're getting 350s, you've got 787s already, do you have ambitions? This person said you had these ambitions, I didn't know you did, to maybe look at the ultra long haul, like Qantas is doing in London Perth, or is that a bridge too far at the moment?
Look, first of all, Qantas, what a great company. We know how successful they are. And of course, Sydney to London was always been kind of an aviator's dream. Personally, I wouldn't want to be on a plane for 19 hours. Just
not even in upper class.
Not even in upper class. But it doesn't mean it's not on the horizon for us in the next few years. We have other more attractive opportunities to go after.
Because it's a pretty high opportunity cost on that aircraft.
Tremendous.
You could do 2 or 3 other trips somewhere else.
So no, and I understand the novelty, and it probably works for them given they're a strong home market. For us, there are higher priority new routes. We talked about Asia. We may want to go back to Japan in the right airport. There are other great, increasing frequencies to Tel Aviv.
When you say the right airport, do you mean Haneda, closer to the city centre?
That's right, yes.
And I haven't even scratched the surface. You mentioned it and I stopped you. Product. I mean, upper class was like the calling card of Virgin over many years seemed to have fallen behind. It's going to come way ahead with an E350.
Why do you say it's fallen behind?
Well, people give me comments about his herringbone seats and so on.
Oh, the herringbone seats, okay.
But what about premium economy and the way you segment economy? I like these names, but do the names live up to reality? Economy Delight and Economy Basic or whatever it is. Classic.
And Light.
Exactly.
Okay. We're going to work, and premium economy, by the way, is just premium now.
Right.
Look, we have the #1 satisfaction scores across the Atlantic. again, what I say has no meaning. It's what the people that fly Virgin Atlantic say. I can tell you, for instance, the A350, the Net Promoter Score, which is something we measure religiously, not just at the aggregate level, but across the journey of the company, is about 5 points better than the other plane that would fly on a New York. And New York is a discriminating thing. IATA tells us we're number one across the Atlantic. By the way, number two is Delta. And we're putting every single effort we have in improving the service to maintain our position and go further. Actually, this month would have been the best Net Promoter Score in the history of Virgin Atlantic, which tells you it's probably one of the best Net Promoter Scores in industry worldwide. And all that is due not just to the product. I really want to give credence and homage to our people. When you look at Net Promoter Score and satisfaction scores, every time there is technology between carriers, it goes to an average. When there's a human touch point, we excel, and that's because of the attitude and capabilities of our people.
When you travel yourself, Shai, whatever cabin on one of your own company services, do you get around and talk to the staff? I mean, you seem to be the kind of guy who would. You hide away in your seat behind your iPad or your paper and ignore the crew.
So I read about other kind of the plight of other CEOs who cannot make themselves known. I feel fortunate enough that I can make myself known. And first, of course, they know I'm on the plane, but I have a ritual. Because, when I enter a plane, I'm actually entering their environment, their place of work. And I asked someone, a guy called John Yates, who ran our cabin crew, what do you do to insert yourself into somebody else's domain in a nice way? And he gave me an unbelievable piece of advice. So every flight, and I have not missed one for the last probably 18 months, I buy 2 very large bags of sweets. I don't buy peanuts because that's
could be risky.
So it's usually Haribo or wine gums.
Right.
And I go to the front and I give it to the flight service manager. And then I go all the way to the back to the cabin service supervisor. And then I go into the cockpit and say hello. And since I know they're about to take off, I tell them I'm available to answer any question, talk about anything when you're ready, not when I'm ready.
But can you buy pilots with a bag of sweets?
The pilots don't get the sweets.
Oh, right.
It's for the cabin, okay?
Right.
And then once in a blue moon, they're really nice to me. For instance, we flew to Tel Aviv, and they invited me to sit in the cabin for landing. And by the way, if the CAA is here, I'm allowed to do that. I find it, this is what we do, right? Engagement with our people is the number one thing.
We've got to go for a couple of questions from the floor because we're nearly out of time. Who would like to ask a question of you? Anybody? This gentleman on the front, if we can, the microphone's just coming your way. If you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself, please, quickly. And make the questions short and snappy, please.
My name is Kenneth. My hobby is aviation.
Can you hold the microphone a bit closer?
Yes. My name is Kenneth. I'm very passionate about aviation. First question, in near future, you will considering offer a student program, education program for the student?
That's a very good question. So the question was, let me answer the first one. Yeah, so I won't forget. Education and aviation. So actually, we have launched our program to do kind of well to do well with our people. Is focused on the communities we work. We launched a program called Passport for Change, or Passport to Change, which is focused on educating and helping schools in the local communities. We're starting in Crawley, Manchester, and Atlanta to promote STEM, so science, technology, and math, engineering, to students so they can learn about the significance of these roles, and hopefully 1 or 2 of them will emerge as engineers or pilots in our company. So we absolutely believe that education is key to this great industry.
Right, we've got all the UK's leading journalists here today, so 2 more questions I can see now.
Okay, Malcolm Ginter, Business Travel News. Just a reflection, really. In fact, Richard, to be fair, really did promote the Union Jack on the aircraft. Are you just going to expand that whole Union Jack with the names of the aircraft? And by the way, with the Australians, they can't help themselves. They've got a hell of a long way to come, and if they can shorten it anyway, I suppose it must work for them.
Yeah. So yeah, of course, Richard did have the livery with the Union Jack, and yeah, if you look at the campaign, when you go into the website, you'll see a big Union Jack there. That's clearly what we're aiming for.
And one more question over here.
If I'm not mistaken, good afternoon, everybody. Simon Calder from The Independent. I don't know when the top journalists are showing up, but never mind.
I've got to give you a few compliments.
As far as I know, we've only mentioned Brexit once. Would you mind, Shai, mentioning it a bit more and just telling us how it's affecting you?
Simon, it's always you with Brexit. You got to get over it at some point. But in all seriousness, look. First of all, from an airline, Virgin Atlantic is ready for a no-deal Brexit. I said that before March 29. I said it before October the 31st, and I will now say it before January 31. Having said that, we have always said that we Virgin Atlantic, respect the wish of the people. So we're not commenting, is Brexit a good idea or a bad idea as a company. What we are saying, with our ethos of best in partnering, we do not believe in unilateral deals, and actually we believe in partnerships. So for us, a deal is a necessity because it does have an impact on families in the UK, and you can see the impact on families and consumer confidence. And of course, you can see the business cycle has taken a long time and not invested as much as you would expect in our economy, and that is absolutely due to uncertainty. And the rule is always the same, and most of the CEOs say the same. Businesses will adapt to any reality. Just give us certainty. So the quicker we can get there, the better it will be for everyone.
Shai, they always say it's not over until a fat lady sings, and she started singing.
She just said, yes.
But I want to ask you one crazy last-minute question. Try to encapsulate this if you can. And there's a reason for asking you this. We haven't touched on the environment. I'm asking everybody I meet these days about that. We've got Greta Thunberg getting a lot of publicity, understandably, because it's a hell of an issue that we all, as human beings, face. I don't want you to give an answer about all your credentials in terms of emissions and so on, but don't you think the industry has to take a completely different approach? And I'm looking to, what I mean is, look at your good colleague, Peter Elbers. KLM puts an advert out saying, do you have to fly? Could you take a train? Could you do a video conference? Isn't that the lead? It's not throwing away the business, but something different.
No, and Peter Elbers is a fantastic leader for KLM, and he's doing the right thing, absolutely. I have no argument with that notion. The most important thing is actually what you said. I don't think we do enough service to this industry in terms of what we provide, and indeed we should do much more, and you will see us emerge as a leader in this space. Not the least the best planes, which is the number one thing that anyone can do. But when you look at 1,500 kilometers and above, people need to fly. I don't believe in going backwards. And by the way, Europe, the UK, Virgin Atlantic, and by the way, BA and IAG, which have done a very good job on this, and we commend them all the time because this is something we can cooperate on. We should be the beacon for the growth coming out of Asia and India. We have a Eurocentric view of the world. Actually, we don't matter that much. The growth is coming somewhere else. So our leadership position in doing the right things on innovating. I would also say, I'm actually giving a speech, I think, in 2 days' time in the Aeronautical Society, and I'm going to be talking about innovation. 1906, first flight. Look at what we've done over the years. It's now the age of doing and innovating in the environmental space for aviation, together with governments, the oil majors, the producers, and everything else. She really wants me off stage.
We've got to wrap up. Yes. Shai, we really are out of time. It's been a pleasure to speak to you. I think a very fascinating story of where Virgin's coming 35 years, where you're taking it now. I will invite you back to grill you on the financial progress and whether you've changed that military troop leader style with your employees as well as you say you have. I'll ask a few of them. But Shai Weiss, CEO of Virgin Atlantic, thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Thanks.